What does feminism mean in 2017? It's a very big question to tackle in 8 minutes, but here I go. When talking about modern feminism, it's obviously important to talk about its past and how it evolved into its current form. If you look up the definition of feminism in the Oxford Dictionary, it comes up with the advocacy of women's rights on the ground of equality of the sexes. As an umbrella definition, of course, this still stands today. However, this definition originated in the late 1970s, a time when feminism focused around a group of political activists who concentrated primarily on legal rights with the main aim of gaining the right to vote, the suffragettes. As this group of women evolved and became a group that fought for reproductive rights, sexual freedom, and equal pay, the definition still stood. Although it in itself is still relevant, the medium through which we fight and our aims have developed. So is it still fair to liken what feminism has become now and how it is fought to how it was fought in the past? The bond between the relatively new online tools that we now have at our disposal and the tried and tested ground action is not really strong enough yet. Social media and the internet in general over the past few years has expanded feminism to the household name that it is now. Although the main aim of any social movement is to reach the size that feminism has, there is often the argument that having done this, it has spread itself too thinly. The main principle of feminism is a political argument of such obvious reason and power that it has now been absorbed as an aesthetic and transformed into a merchandise machine by a series of influential profiteers. Marketplace feminism, as it is called, is criticised for depoliticising and watering down the core meaning, and instead turning it into a media trend. It has been so integrated into our culture that we no longer see it as a movement, but more as a norm, and instead of turning leading to complacency. It's a natural response to see the progress that has been made and to sit back and celebrate. 1 in 3 MPs are women. That's better than before. That means progress is being made. It just takes time. This, to a degree, is in part to blame for the result of the 2016 presidential election. It was clear that it was 2016, it was America, the leading country of the free world. So much progress had already been made. There was no way that a candidate with such progressive, conservative views on women could be elected because of how much views had actually progressed. Instead, we've got Donald Trump. Backlash has a way of taking advantage of periods of complacency. On the one hand, feminism has never before been as widely proclaimed or marketable as it is now. On the other hand, these last 10 years of mainstream prominence and acceptability have led to a great backlash, arguably aiding in the election of Donald Trump as the leader of the free and progressive new world. So, marketability, is it as good as it's made out to be? This also ties in with the perception that the media landscape is brimming with the language of empowerment, but it is offering little in the way of actual transformation or change. Brands such as Weight Watchers and Spanx are now selling their products as empowering to women. If every independent act by women is being lauded as empowering, how is this any less patronising than praising a woman for having an opinion? Of course, self-love and independence is an important attribute that everyone, men and women, must adopt. However, not particularly under the label of empowerment. No longer does the term refer to the idea of gaining power for the good of the group, but just one woman gaining power for the good of herself, a great shift from the collective to the individual. So the inside threat to modern feminism in 2017 is not the dislike of radical ideas, but the formation of a superficial, market-based alignment that is more likely to feel good and righteous than lead to the political action that feminism is meant to spur. However, despite all these problems posed by the new, untrodden waters of modern feminism, there is no doubt that the online world has allowed feminism to flourish, as more people's voices are being heard, especially young people's. Projects such as the Everyday Sexism Project, that documents instances of sexism in everyday life, have allowed for more global awareness for problems from all walks of life. Although the word empowerment may be being overused, modern feminism has to be about the spirit of collaboration, both among women and between men and women. Monumental steps in progression for feminism in the past have almost all originated from acts of solidarity. The suffragettes chaining themselves to railings, the Dagenham strike in 1968. If the opening of the widely available online platform means collaboration can come into full force, then the next step is about finding a way of adopting traditional ways in championing change and relating and updating them to fit modern society. This, of course, must accompany a continuing fight. Marches, protests, awareness, finding the cause within the large movement of feminism that you most relate with and most believe in, and fighting for that. It is the best way of adapting such a widespread idea to fit your mini-sphere of feasible change. Whether it be the pay gap, FGM, maternity leave, abortion, the most important thing is to keep fighting. If nothing else good comes of the presidential election, let it be a wake-up call to any complacency and a reason to keep fighting for our beliefs. Feminism in 2017 is about tirelessly persisting in the fight for equality. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah?
You mentioned how complacency, in your opinion, has contributed to Donald Trump's success. Could you expand more on that, seeing as he did win the popular vote, how you see that has happened?
I think, obviously, the statistics and all those things I'm not 100% sure about, but I think there was a degree of complacency where women and men and everyone thought that, everyone here as well was saying, oh, it will never happen, it's Donald Trump, nothing like that, it's America. But it did, and I think that has been the problem in many cases where we've thought that there's been change. All it takes is time. We're adopting different policies in different areas, and so change will come just with time. But I think it's also about carrying on and persisting. Yeah.
How did you choose what your talk was going to be about?
Well, I went to a Guardian panel at the Barbican about the fight for equality, and they raised loads of issues that I wanted to kind of delve more into. And the kind of concept of social change and social movements really interested me, and feminism was everyone I could kind of relate to.
I'm not going to ask you the question that I said. No. Do you think that equality is the best concept to use when we're thinking about feminism? What about liberation? Is that useful as well? Liberation for women as opposed to equality. I'm just thinking why, because if you use equality, it kind of suggests that you're comparing yourselves to men. And I wonder if liberation just gives you a different route away from men, perhaps.
I think part of the problem as well is that we have a tendency to kind of the normal way of viewing things is through the eyes of not through men's eyes, but through the eyes of roles that were traditionally male, and so we're kind of trying to fit into those roles. Whereas I think if liberation is the kind of idea of making our own roles and not fitting into the roles that are already there, then yeah, probably.
Have you been on any of the women's marches that there have been recently, and do you think that they help the cause at all?
I haven't personally, but I think a lot of the time we think that marches are you kind of sign up and you go to a march and then you kind of come home and you're like, brilliant, I did that, well done me. But I think marches are the first step. You need to go to a march, and that is just the beginning of your kind of change. So the marches have to be the beginning of leading on to a whole range of other actions that you do. Yes.
Do you believe in positive discrimination, for example, in order to achieve more balance in the Houses of Parliament?
I do, in certain aspects, I do, because the reason it is called feminism is because the discrimination has been against women in the past, and there's no point ignoring that. And as much as it is about equality and equality means kind of bringing everything to a level, I think also there has to be an element of positive discrimination to get to that level. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you a bit more about consumerism, because you mentioned how empoweritizing, I think is the word, how companies use that, but then also you can see in some of the images that for the equal pay protest, they'd actually use the slogan "because we're worth it," which comes from advertising itself. So what do you think about the relationship between consumerism and feminism and sort of mainstreaming, and how far is it helpful and how far is it?
I think obviously feminism wouldn't, like I said, it's now a household name. It wouldn't become as big as it is now if it hadn't been for all those companies. However, there is a fine line. So as much as I talk about empowerment and how it's being overused, I think, the kind of, what is it, Dove campaign, the, like a girl, I don't know if it's Dove, I think that, in its own right is crucial, but if a company does it in the right way and the proper way, then there are also companies that don't. So, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a role model for what you think, for you right now, the best feminist out there? Who do you think encapsulates for you as somebody who is not not using it as a brand management, or it's just something that's very cool right now? Is there anyone that you look to that has got that down?
In particular, I'm not exactly sure, but I think, in the past, feminist leaders were women who became feminist leaders in their own right because they believed in feminism, whereas now we have, women like Emma Watson, Beyonce, who are kind of not leading but kind of pushing feminism forward, but they have reached the platform, and they're using their platform, but they've reached that platform by other means. So as much as I admire them for what they're doing, I feel as though it would probably, I'm not exactly sure, Chimamanda Ngozi, I can't remember her surname, who did the TED Talk on We Should All Be Feminists and wrote a book. She is a woman she's an author, and I agree with most of the things she says. So her, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
How well do you think the feminist movement deals with conflict within itself?
Not very well, I don't think. I think because it has become so broad and essentially so broad that it's and it has so many things within it, like the problem of intersectionality and all the problems within it. I think it doesn't deal with those problems very well, and that is why there are certain divides and splits that are kind of occurring that make people slightly lose faith in the core of principle. Yeah.
How do you think feminism could kind of reclaim its focus? And you talk about becoming an umbrella term for so many other issues before. What do you think could be done?
I think because it has become so big and it has become this umbrella term, I think there's no point trying to kind of hone it back into what it was in, the early 20th century. I think it has to progress as times progress, and I think the way that it needs to do that is by kind of accepting that it is now an umbrella term, and it has all the different factions in it that you, like I said, you have to relate to and fight for individually.
What do you think about the aspects of things that aren't necessarily feminist, like gentlemanship, or like saying, oh, women can go, that's open the door? Do you think that we should just discard all of that?
I think half of the fight for equality and feminism is about attitudes, and changing attitudes has to originate from a young age, and teaching, you know, boys and girls the different, you know, in education and all things like that. And I think it shouldn't be, you know, a boy should be chivalrous just because it's a nice thing to do, not because he's a boy and he needs to be chivalrous. So, and that kind of thing has to come from, you know, teaching and education in, you know, when kids are young.
I think Ariane has to go to an oral now, so thank you so much.